everybody, how's it doing? How's it going? Welcome back to another episode of Tales from the Creeps. Today's kind of a special request, I guess, because a little bit ago, like a week ago, I posted my own horror story on the subreddit, and someone commented on it. They're super nice. What's the name again? The Republic. They commented on my video. I am tired. It's late. I still needed to record, so sorry if I'm stuttering. But anyway, they commented on my story. They said they really liked it, and they suggested to go to their subreddit and pick out a story to read on my channel. And I was like, yeah, sure. So, I have not read this story. It just sounded interesting. It's called Risen. I have no idea what it's about. It sounds pretty cool. So, but yeah, this is by the Republic. I will leave all the links in the description below so you can check them out. Please be encouraging and supportive of all the authors I read. Again, so without further ado, Risen. The smell of rain in the air. My mind fails to conceive of an event better scent than that of the fresh vapor. Not a moment too soon either, for the small town can finally reign in its festivities that April brings. Rejoice, for he has risen. All the ladies and gentlemen in attendance drag their shoes through the watered grass, their Sunday best in accordance with the day, but the day is better suited for children. A few of the boys and I hid the treasures throughout the meadow of preparation. All while the participants were getting ready to start their engines, us adults were already dividing out of the proportions for everyone's dish. The missus was itching to bust out the old roaster for lamb, and I could finally whip up some of my cherished sweets. As everyone had gotten their fill, the children were becoming restless. I got up from my seat, made my way to the edge of the meadow, started the race. Before I could finish up my call, they were off. Off they went, to flip every rock, to round every tree, to comb through every dense bundle of flowers. Satisfied, I went back to my table and poured myself a big cup of tea. Parents who were concerned with their children's safety went to help out with the search. Those who stayed were in for a treat of cake, tarts, and biscuits. Tea, dark as stained glass, never tasted sweeter. We spent most of the morning socializing, but our leisure's time were cut short by fierce wind. Every family was in attendance, from Hanbys to the Naggles. Just about every shade of green was here. That especially meant inviting the less than welcoming families. One of these families was the bitter Douglas. Eon Douglas, the son of David Douglas, was an unruly child that didn't know when to quit when he was going good. Almost always, he boasted until he made a fool of himself, often by counting his chicks before they hatched. He was the one to throw white river stones into his basket and pass them off as eggs. The little cuss would consider himself clever and deem the scam a success before it was ever tested. Surprisingly, the little miscreant actually stayed his hand at trickery and filled his basket with 24 eggs. You can imagine my surprise at this, but it took account of everyone's baskets, an average of 10 eggs, except for the 3 finalists. Little Arnie Hanby scored a humble 23 eggs while scouring the flowers and tall grass. Miss Ayla Nagel was sitting pretty and proper at 24, her infectious smile spreading to everyone. Sadly, this year's winner was Eon, who stood with an impressive 25 eggs total. We all gathered with the church to shelter from the Isle winds. I secluded myself within the back storage room with my many baskets in hand. With the winner's baskets finally tallied, I double-checked my account. Couldn't be certain on the first go, but the last egg was the one that managed to catch my attention. It was no poultry egg, not even encased with a hard shell. Instead, it was a leathery sack, writhing, pulsating, and eerily pale. It stood out among the other eggs. That is when it began to crack. Not that the sound was coming from the egg itself, but rather from what was inside. Hollow bones popped, cartilage slid like wet plates. Developing lungs drew their first breath. Gnawed limbs stretched out from the soft membrane. Every attempt became labored than the last until it tore through the wet paper. What emerged was not an animal, so much as it was a thing. I could tell from its breathing that the air stung, but it still drew reprisal. A horrible little misshapen thing, too fresh to do just about anything. It surprised me when the wings emerged from beneath its arms. When it took flight, my heart nearly jumped out of its cage. It broke through the ceiling and its skin became slick with rain. The newfound hydration gave volume to its frail frame. A barbed tail trailed closely behind its smoky breath. You'd forgive him. You'd be forgiven for mistaking its awful, guttural call for a crackling of lightning. It was close to enough to hear its unfiltered shriek. The following events were nothing short of unfortunate. I was accused of fixing the game, and our family was told firmly that we would never be allowed to host another event. I had to pay for the hole in the roof of our own pocket. The Douglas family pierced my frame with scornful eyes so intense it physically hurt to be in their presence. I was voiceless for much of what was transpired. My only defense was my missus, fighting back all the venom spat my way. From then on forth, a new terror of night had spreaded. Our safe community became a dwindling population. Youngsters loved to hang out at night, far from supervision, but they put themselves in harm's way through seclusion. That's how youth went missing, alone, unsuspecting. Too late. The more people went looking for missing kids, the more population dropped. Families tried opening up investigations in hope of getting their children back. As the weeks drew on, every week, old, sick, and injured member of our quaint community disappeared into the night. Some people that didn't make the bait described the lure in great detail. Young voices called out for their parents, long-lost relatives inviting the living to join them in the forest, and hurt animals hollowing in pain. The comforting lies lulled and unwriting into a death too fast to process. There was barely anything to identify those who fell victim. On rare instances, there were pieces small enough to fit inside a coin purse. I couldn't stand to hear mothers wail in anguish, their world shattered by police reports. I remember the missus claiming she had our son reach out to her from the garden. It wasn't him. Not really, because I knew my son died years ago. His tombstone jutted out of the graveyard. Should have never taken my eyes off her. Came home to an empty house, draft left in the cold air from the back door, tea boiled over in the kettle in her absence. I blame myself for her death. It was wrong. It was undeserved. But most of all, it was innocent life taken too soon. The remaining few left. Families that I knew were far bigger, leaving those missing pieces behind. I felt guilty. It was my fault. My inaction caused all of this sorrow. My trip into town was plagued by the sight of empty streets and closed shops. I know it's cowardly, but I needed something old and familiar to take my mind off the situation. That's when I saw the last person I was expecting to be standing in a dodgy bar. Sitting all by the lonesome was David. Tired, irritated, eyes pierced through me. He didn't give me a chance to greet him as he was interrogating. Everything that went down did so after April. I've never known someone more suspicious in my life than you. See through his clenched jaw. Just tell me. It doesn't matter anymore. Did you do it? Did you kill Ion? I couldn't muster a response fast enough for David. He grabbed me by the collar and interrogated me further. What did he ever do to you? He was just a kid. He didn't know any better, but that wasn't enough for you. I know you didn't care for us. I know! So please give me the courtesy of an answer. Did you kill Eon? Some bystanders pulled off me, but I'd be lying if I said his anger wasn't justified. I did kill Eon. I let that spawn go, and it lured Eon into its clutches. I would be more disappointed if he hadn't tried to kill me. What little I knew ate away at me. I couldn't bear to see this monster spread to other towns and uproot their way to life. I'm going to do something I should have done to begin with. It's unsettling the lack of bustling commotion. It should never be this quiet. I could never hear the hum of street lights from within my own house. I won't let this kind of silence infect the lives of others. I've already begun to hear the voice of myself, old friends, past relatives, and kind temptations tried to lull me into surrender. I knew better than to give in to them. That's when I heard real voices. One unrehearsed, the wheezing and panting traveled over rattling ribs. It made something of its gibberish, but I wish I hadn't heard its awful voice. They are safe. Safer than they have been in months prior. I wouldn't speak to David because I was afraid of another father's wrath. This, however, was not a person nor an animal that it pitied. I would let it know what I thought of its honeyed words. You don't get to ruin their memory with an awful snapper of yours. I granted them the honor of a quick death. Where they went, you cannot follow. I am preparing this place for new arrivals. It hissed out in a hoarse breath. You speak boldly. Maybe you'll honor me by stepping inside. You spared me once before. You won't grant me the same courtesy this time around. The monster announced as it never once walked into the light. You've grown. You fed me well, it remarked. I ground my teeth to conceal my hatred. I hated that it could announce the fact so boldly. I aimed my double barrel at my open doorway and fired at will. In 4 months, That might have ended my existence. It merely serves to inconvenience me when you retaliate. Its smugness could leak out from from a row of sharp teeth, then this monster felt all too well. I couldn't contain my anger. I screamed outwards, dark, "What are you?" It paused for many minutes as it scoured through its attained vocabulary, carefully formulating a bitter, vile response. None came. Instead, it mocked me with a plain statement. The rasp and hissed it said, "I am risen again." Talons relaxed and the house settled. A wafting of wings bigger than any bird carved silently through the air. I chambered many rounds and fired wildly in directions. A saddening click brought me out of my rage. I punched my doorway until my knuckles became raw and bloody. My scream found no ears, for there were none to hear my frustration. The weight of my failure brought me down. I cried knowing which voice it used to mock me. My dear missus should have never been the target of its smear campaign. Her good character was not in its tarnish. I gathered up all my courage and will. I would need it for what was next to come. I'm not really sure if what I saw was really there, but one thing is for certain. I was left dumbfounded. That thing grew and grew until I inadvertently caused the death of some dear friends. I am the one at fault. My hesitation caused all of this. I will not fail again. I do not intend to return, so I ask of anyone that reads this confession. I failed to vanquish this evil, and I hope you will finish the deed. Prevent its disease-like existence from flourishing. That was... hey, that was pretty good. Memes aside, I was locked in that whole story. I didn't, break. I didn't... What a fun story. Okay, I might be wrong here. I love creature features. Alright. But was the egg supposed to be an Antichrist deal on Easter that, just fed off this town? It's such, a mystery that my brain can't piece together because I'm too stupid. But that was a very fun story. I honestly think what hatched was probably some form or a metaphor for the Antichrist. Man, thank you for... There's a fly on my screen. Get out of here. Beelzebub. No, I'm playing. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching and listening. Appreciate it. Thank you so much for all the new subscribers. 561 is is awesome. All right, I love it. So, like I said, all the links will be in the description below if you want to check out the author. I'll even leave a link in the description below for the author, for the story I wrote. I'm not gonna lie, it's an Elden Ring fanfic, kinda. It's a horror story based around the concept of madness in that world. I'm pretty proud of it, and I will leave a link in the Discord if you want to join us, chat, and hang out, just talk about whatever. So, again, thank you all so much. You have a great night. I'm going to bed. All right. Later.